Okay, so the Elderflower Champagne has been fermenting in the bucket for just over a week now, I think about 8 or 9 days, and it's pretty much fermented out. So I'm reading about 994 on the hydrometer sample there. Let's have a look at it in the bucket. So it's not completely stopped bubbling, so it might dry out a little bit further, but most of the activity seems to have ceased. It's quite hazy still, as you can see from the sample here. But what I'm going to do now is actually siphon it down into a corny keg. Now, you do have the option to bottle this, so you can do one of two things. You can let it ferment out fully and then prime it in the bottle, which would be my preference if I was going to bottle it, or you can bottle it before it's actually finished fermenting, which is what you see on a lot of the internet recipes for this, but personally I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, especially not if you're going to use glass bottles, because it's really hard to judge the level of carbonation and there's a good chance that you're going to end up with bottle bombs. If you're using plastic bottles, then they will inflate and you can release pressure off of them fairly easily, but with glass bottles obviously potentially a lot more dangerous doing it that way. So yeah, so I'm going to put it into a corny keg and use that to force carbonate it, and also kind of act effectively like a bright tank for the wine. If you don't have corny kegs, then obviously bottling would be the next best option, but I would personally go with priming it after it's fermented out. Also gives it longer to settle out in the fermenting vessel, so maybe rack it to a second FV and then let it fully ferment out from that and then bottle off of that. Means you'll get less sediment in the bottles in the end. This way, using the corny keg, hopefully after the first bit is drained through, once it's all settled out, I should end up with really clear wine doing it this way, because it will be allowed to settle out in the corny, like I said. So get it in there, flush it with CO2, and then force carbonate it and leave it to settle out, hopefully clear down a little bit more for another week or a couple of weeks, and see how we get on. Okay, so let's get that started. Okay, so just a quick tip for getting a siphon started but keeping it hygienic without using auto siphons or anything like that. If you pop the tap on the end and then give that a quick suck and pull it out with your teeth, you can avoid putting your mouth or lips over the end that's actually going to go into the bucket, or corny in this case, that you're siphoning to. So as long as you're quick and don't end up throwing the wine or beer everywhere, you can get a simple siphon started relatively hygienically doing that. Right, so I've got the keg now filled and hooked up to gas, so I'm just going to purge the headspace. Okay, so that should be sufficient to drive out any oxygen and so on. So I'm aiming for about 4 volumes of CO2 at the moment. So with the keg or kegerator set at 6 degrees, that means a PSI of 30 should get us to that level of carbonation. I will be probably shaking it up periodically, so to speed that process up a bit and basically make sure I can actually take it out of the keg and into bottles as soon as possible. So be back in a little while to update on that. Right, so it's time to get this Elderflower Champagne into some bottles. It's actually been in the keg there for a bit longer than intended, so I had a couple of other beers brewing that needed to go in to the kegerator, and yeah, basically just didn't get round to sorting out. So it's actually been in the keg for about 3 weeks. It's been under pressure all of that time, but it has been moved between sort of hot and cold environment, so I'm not sure exactly what level of carbonation it's going to end up at, but it's a champagne, so as long as it's quite high, I don't mind. I have got 10 1 litre pop bottles ready for it to go into, which have all been washed and sanitised with Star San, and I'm going to be using the carbonation cap filler thing to transfer the champagne into those bottles. So let's get on with that and see how it comes out. Right, so I've done a video on how to use this carbonation cap before, but just for the benefit of those of you that haven't seen it, what we do is take that, the carbonation cap has got a little length of beer line on it. That is the length I would normally use with beer bottles, as you can see, so it doesn't quite reach down to the bottom of this, but if I tilt it on its side it should be okay. Screw that onto the top of the bottle, and then we want to take our gas line from the keg and just pressurise it to the same pressure that the keg's at. I've dropped the pressure in the keg right down to about 3 or 4 psi because it's highly carbonated, so yeah, I want to be taking it pretty slow, getting the liquid out of there. I'm just going to vent the bottle a little bit to purge any oxygen out of there, and then seal that back up. Gas line back on the keg. I've then got a little jumper lead here for the outlet from the keg, and that's going to go back onto the top of here, and then we basically just gradually loosen off the bottle until it starts to put liquid through. It's going to fizz up quite a bit, so we do want to take it fairly gently and then fill the bottle up. And this is the first one, so I'm expecting this one at least to be fairly cloudy, but hopefully it will start to clear as we get through the other bottles. So just carry on filling that up and then carry on with the others and show you what we get at the end. So you are going to end up with quite a bit of foam coming out the top with a well carbonated drink like this. So I've just put a tray down on the bottom to catch any overflow. We then disconnect once we've got a decent level in the bottle, and then we want to unscrew the carbonation cap and quickly whack the lid back on that bottle, and that's it basically. So that's then ready to go in the fridge, or to be drunk, or to condition a little bit further. Right, so I'm about halfway through bottling this now, and there's a lot of condensation on the bottle there, but as you can see it did clear up a bit as I got further down the keg. There's still a slight haze to it, but I don't really mind that too much. It's not too bad, and in the glass it should look pretty clear. So I think it's a good moment to have a little tester of this and see what it's tasting like. So far kegging it has worked out quite well in terms of obviously there not being any sediment in the bottle and it having a slightly cleaner appearance. Carbonation wise, it's definitely got a nice fizz to it. Maybe not quite as fizzy as no, to be fair, there's not loads of bubbles streaming up in the glass, but tasting it does have a good level of carbonation to it. It's definitely got that kind of carbonation bite to it. Looks good in the glass. Massive aroma of elderflower to it. Yeah, not too bad at all. And I think that's about, well, it's been 3 weeks in the keg, so could probably still age a little bit and smooth out, but it has got a very nice kind of champagne-like dryness to it, and a real crisp finish. So I think this will score me a few brownie points with the missus. She will be liking this as a accompaniment to the summer barbecues, and yeah, pretty pleased with that. It's quite The lemon's coming through quite strongly on this, so I think maybe next time I would possibly reduce the lemon slightly, or maybe just up the amount of elderflower in it, but it's pretty good. So cheers. Okay, so just before I wrap this video up, I thought I'd add a little bit more footage of me showing, well, basically presenting the Elderflower Champagne a bit better. The last little bit of footage I watched back, and yeah, me just sort of having a quick swig of it in a tumbler in the shed wasn't really selling it that well, I don't think. So this is a few days later. I've got a bottle here that's been in the fridge. The bottle's feeling nice and firm, so there's definitely some good carbonation in there. And this isn't a champagne flute, it's a bit bigger than that, as you can see. So this is a Pilsner glass that I've got, but it works quite well for this. So yeah, just to show you how it's come out, a bit better than the last little sequence. Let's chuck some of this in here. So as soon as you pour this stuff out, you get a massive aroma of elderflower in the room. As you can see, you get that nice little bit of froth at the top, which dies away as you do with other sparkling wines. And in this glass, you can see much better the carbonation that we've got going on there. Slightly hazy, but pretty clear as you get down towards the bottom of the glass. And yeah, drinking pretty well too. So cheers again, guys. Well worth a crack, this recipe. That's the Elderflower Champagne, carbonated off the keg. Very nice. Cheers.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness, or duder, or you know, El Duderino.